Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it.
I help equip Baton Rouge communities with resources that facilitate change.
Who go above and beyond to help it thrive.
I'm educating children in the Bronx on their community history.
During Black History Month, AARP recognizes leaders who uplift communities.
I'm helping the community take their health more seriously.
AARP believes when we unite for the greater good, we thrive together.
Hey folks, drummer Thomas Went back with you here again for another brand new episode of The Vinyl Report. Today is a very special episode for me because today we're going to be talking about the great Pittsburgh guitarist James Willis Ponder, better known as Jimmy Ponder. I had the honor of playing with Mr. Ponder for several years when I was younger, and today's special guest has an even deeper connection to the great Jimmy Ponder. Please welcome Mr. Mark Strickland to The Vinyl Report.
Hi, I'm jazz drummer Thomas Went. On behalf of the August Wilson African American Cultural Center, it's my pleasure to present The Vinyl Report. We'll explore the records of some of Pittsburgh's most influential jazz artists of all time. For some, vinyl is now being rediscovered, but for me, it never went away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Vinyl Report.
You, as I mentioned, you being one of the great Pittsburgh guitarists, you go way back with Jimmy Ponder. Now, you told me you started playing guitar when you were about 11 or so. Is that right?
Yeah, about 11 or 12.
And when did you first become aware of Jimmy? And then when did you first meet him?
So it's funny, man. You know, like the music was everywhere in all the communities, man. It wasn't just in the clubs. People played on the streets. You know, they had the showmobiles and all that. But in Belt Suver, my cousins lived there, and they actually went to school with Jimmy. They were a little older than me, and they knew I played the guitar. They thought I was great. I wasn't playing nothing, man. I was playing like the old Motown tunes. It was cool. Mm-hmm. But anyway, since I was playing guitar and they knew Jimmy, they called him Fats at the time, and they said, "Man, I want to take you around this cat named Fats's house." I'm like, okay, I'm hanging with my cousins, man, it'll be cool. So I go around there, man, and they were like, yeah, man, play something, man. After I listened to him play, I was like, man, I'm not playing, man. This guy's a professional.
Now, Jimmy was about 6 years older than you.
Yeah, Jimmy was about 6 years older than me.
So he was probably like a senior in high school, something like that?
I would imagine he was probably a senior. I was probably about 12, maybe 13, and yeah, he was probably like, senior.
I know from playing with him and from playing with you that you guys have a lot of the same influences. Yeah. Could you talk about some of those shared influences that you have?
Yeah, well, being a Pittsburgher, man, like the great influencer for me was George Benson. We would occasionally, sneak into the Hurricane or to the Grill, and we would see some of these guys play. But those were like Kenny Burrell and George, and to a lesser degree for me anyway, in the beginning, Wes Montgomery, because I didn't understand the whole concept of the octaves thing, which Jimmy could really do.
Yeah.
But those were some of the influences, and Jimmy's a little older, and he was more probably from George's era, but he was influenced by George as well, man.
Sure.
All of us were, man.
Yeah.
We were all touched by George Benson, man.
I remember Jimmy telling me that his first time in the Crawford Grill, his parents took him there to see Kenny Burrell when he was about 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, he said that was the first time he was ever in there, and he was like a little kid watching Kenny Burrell.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And so, I would go into the Hurricane. Really, that was really the only club you could actually get into kind of consistently, because they usually wouldn't let me into the Crawford Grill, but we would go around to the back and we
to the side door there.
Yeah, to the side door. Everybody knows about the side door, And, you would see all these guys. Pat Martino would play there, and George. And I never saw Grant play there. But I knew
He did play there, though.
Yeah. I saw Grant down at the Crazy Quilt in the 70s.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So the record we're going to be talking about today and listening to is Jimmy Ponder's album Jump, recorded on March 28th of 1988 in the famed Van Gelder recording studios in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. Jimmy recorded for Muse all through the 1980s and made some fantastic records. This is just one of them, and it features the great Big John Patton on organ of the Blue Note Records fame, tenor saxophonist by the name of James Anderson, who was a school teacher at that particular time in Newark, but a great tenor player. Jimmy Ponder, of course, on guitar. And the one and only Eddie Gladden on drums, who recorded with people like Larry Young and Woody Shaw. And Lawrence Killian plays percussion. So we're going to get started with the very first tune on the album, which is also a Jimmy Ponder original, entitled I Will Always Be There. Check this one out. Hope you guys enjoyed that tune. As I was saying, Jimmy wrote some really great tunes that are just not played anymore. But as I said, we're going to try to change that here in Pittsburgh. So you first met Jimmy when you were really young.
Right.
As a guitarist in your own right, what were some of the things that you got from him as a guitarist, as far as playing the instrument?
Well, here's the deal. Like, when you're 12 or 13, you really don't know much about the instrument. You don't know much about the history of the instrument. And to see someone play the guitar like that as a professional was like, wow, you could really actually do that on the instrument, which is something that you didn't see like in the neighborhood. There was no one around that could play like that. Even though there were some guys around town that were really good guitar players.
Sure.
But that was the first introduction to somebody that could, play like the people that you heard on the records. But secondly, not long after that, I think Jimmy left town for like a long time.
He did.
And it was, I don't know, maybe 10 or so years later that was the next time that I actually saw him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about your relationship with him? Because I know you guys were close, man. I know he loved you very much.
Yeah, because I was stealing off of him all the time, man.
You're not the only one.
That's the sincerest form of flattery,
Sure.
So, but I was, I would really go to listen to Jimmy to see what I could learn, and just to listen to the great music that he was playing. Mm-hmm. But in doing that, you would go to the club and he would spot you in the club.
Oh, yes.
And he would call you out, man.
Yep.
I don't care who was playing. Come on up here, youngster.
Yep.
And get some of this.
Yeah.
He called me, what did he call me? One of the babies.
Oh, yeah. He called me that, too.
Yeah, man. I'm an old guy, man. He called me a baby, man.
But you weren't as old as he was.
Well, I wasn't
so you
as
were a
old
baby.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Yeah.
And I took that, man, just so I could kind of hang around the cat. And also, man, that, what do they call it when, you get, like, endorsed by one of the old cats?
Sure.
He would introduce me to someone and say, yeah, this is my boy Mark, man. He can play, man. That was a big deal to me.
That's a serious stamp of approval, man.
Yeah, man. There were a couple guys around town that I really looked up to. He was one of them, like Larry McGee, and Luther
DeJohnette.
Yeah, man. There were a few guys, but Jimmy, man, he was like leading the pack.
Mm-hmm. Man. Yeah, he led the pack in a lot of ways.
Yes, he did, man.
Yeah.
Plus, he had that iconic guitar, man.
Super 400.
Yeah. And you would go to his gigs, right? And he'd be there with that guitar. Come on up here, youngster. And he would hand it to you. And this thing was huge.
Yeah.
Because he had these hands,
His
man.
hands were gigantic.
They were gigantic,
and
man.
strong.
And he would always give you the handshake of death.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
had to be sure you got all the way in there.
All the way in, man, because if he caught you on the fingers, man. But the other part of it was he played with his thumb.
Yeah.
And so I never had a pick when I would sit in, man, and it always felt like super uncomfortable to play this gigantic guitar with no pick.
Oh, man.
But the sound, and I don't think he ever cleaned it. It was always just... It had all the smoke and juices of wherever he was, man, was in that guitar, man.
Yeah.
I love that, man. That what is it like that? The nostalgia or the history that was in the guitar, man.
Yeah.
I always wanted a box like that. I bought like 3 of them. They all sucked. But I could never get one like that.
I hear you, man. I hear you. We're going to talk more about that when we come back, but let's get back to the music. Now, one thing Jimmy did do really well, actually, was sing. He was a good singer.
Yep.
And he would always sing on the gig, So we're going to check out a blues. He sings Stormy Monday Blues on this album, and he does it as only he can do it. So here's Jimmy Ponder playing and singing Stormy Monday Blues. Give this one a listen. You're listening to The Vinyl Report.
You know they call it Stormy Monday. Tuesday's just as bad. You know they call it Stormy Monday. Tuesday's just as bad. You know that Wednesday's worse. Thursday I feel oh so sad. Oh yeah. The eagle flies on Friday, yeah. Saturday I'll go out to play. Eagle flies on Friday, yeah. Saturday I'll go out to play. Sunday I go to church. I kneel down to pray. Oh, yeah. I said, Lord, 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 please have mercy, yeah. I said, Lord, 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 please have mercy, yeah, 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 yeah. I said, Lord, Lord, please bring that little girl back home to me. Oh, yeah. Have mercy, yeah. I said, Lord, 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 please have mercy, yeah. I said, Lord, Lord, bring that little girl back home to me. Oh, Stormy Monday.
there's really nothing like Jimmy Ponder and the blues. And this recording of Stormy Monday is a really great example of that. And before we listen to that, you were talking about, you know, sort of the more spiritual part of Jimmy's guitar.
Yes, sir.
But one of the things, you know, when I first started playing with him, I was about 17, 18, and he was really the first older musician that I played with that was on that sort of upper spiritual level.
Yeah.
And to be that young and experience that, for me, was like, it was really life-changing. Because I remember how strong his rhythm was.
Oh,
and when
man.
he would play something, it would like hit you, you know? And I had never experienced that before. And it was a very special thing to sort of play with someone who had that kind of artistic strength.
Yeah, the artistic strength and the power of the rhythm, man. First of all, he could do that with his thumb, which was amazing. He could play chords and these double stops faster than I could with a pick with his thumb.
I know.
It was crazy, man. And the chords that he used in like his chord solos, they're reminiscent of like the Wes Montgomery kind of thing, even though I don't think he kind of listened to Wes as much as maybe he listened to maybe like Kenny Burrell or somebody. But that style of playing chord solos was something that was kind of new to me.
You know, yeah, absolutely.
You know, as a matter of fact, I didn't know anyone around that could do that.
Yeah.
Like that.
And even once in a while, he would do the double octave thing that Wes did once in a while. Jimmy wouldn't do that much, but when he did, it was the most incredible sound.
That was incredible sound, man. And to me, he's the closest guy, man, that could get that sound like Wes.
Yeah.
Of any other guys that I've heard. And I've heard a lot of cats, man, trying to do it. I try to do it from time to time.
You do very well.
Well, you know, I do what I can, man. But, you know, like you said, man, like one of the first guys, man, that took the music to that level. Like I saw him playing with Gene Ludwig, man, and man, it was just crazy, man. Like the music that was coming out of the box, man, and I'm like, this is right here in Pittsburgh.
I know. Yeah.
Right here in Pittsburgh. These guys are from Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Bringing it like that.
Yeah.
There were a few guys, man, that honestly, man, it was like they were just like anointed, man. It was like a spiritual thing. Roger Humphreys.
For sure.
Those that don't know who that is, and you know, Jimmy, George,
Sure.
and Gene, bad dude, man. There was a few of them around.
Guys. Yeah.
Now these are the older cats, like Joe Harris.
Sure.
You know, these are people that I grew up, man, with. You know, actually, Joe Harris and Rabbit Barnes, they lived in my neighborhood.
You're from Manchester on the north
From
side.
Manchester, man, and I used to see these guys all the time, man.
Yeah, the music was in the community. It was just there, which is so different from today, and it's hard to kind of explain that to younger students, which I know you try to do.
That's right, because you would go into a local club, and those guys would play. You know, it's so funny. The guys from that generation, like Joe Harris and Rabbit, it's funny because when you're young, you feel like that's old-timey music. Because when I got into the bag, you know, playing, the first jazz that I was really kind of exposed to other than the records was like the boogaloo kind of stuff. Like they were playing Alligator Boogaloo and that kind of stuff, man.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
Jimmy could kill that, man.
Oh man, yeah,
He was all in that.
He's on a lot of those records.
Yeah.
You know, with Lou Donaldson,
Lou
Charles
Donaldson.
Earlin,
Right.
Charles Earlin, those guys. Yeah, man.
And that's the stuff that, you know, to kind of pique my interest, you know, the guys from my age group.
Yep.
You know, that was on the jukebox.
Sure.
You know.
Dig it. Yeah.
It more so than like the post-swing era stuff. You know what I mean?
Bebop and
Bebop.
hard bop stuff.
Yeah, you know, like Rabbit and, you know, they come out of the Milt Jackson.
Yeah,
and
they
that.
came out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, Jimmy was such an incredibly powerful player, but he was also an amazing ballad player. You know, he could play a ballad like nobody. It's such a cliche thing to say, but it's really true. The next tune that we're going to hear is another one of his originals. This is actually, I think, if I had to pick one of my favorites of Jimmy's tunes, I think this is it. This is such a beautiful ballad. This is called When Love Comes My Way. Check this out. All right, that was When Love Comes My Way. Welcome back to the Vinyl Report. I am so honored to be here today, sitting down and talking with one of my dear friends and mentors, the great Pittsburgh Jazz guitarist Mark Strickland. Man, since Jimmy's passing a number of years ago, you're really sort of carrying his musical mantle forward, man, and doing it in great, grand fashion. And you're now teaching probably more than you ever have been in your life. Would that be accurate for me to say?
Yes. Actually, man, it was like kind of out of nowhere, man. I started teaching at Pitt a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And with this Facebook and all this stuff, man, people kind of see the things that you do, and man, cats from all over, man, they seek you out to take lessons on Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not that old. I don't want you to get the idea that I don't know what it is, but it's still kind of new, that the people can do that.
Sure.
Talking about how the music has progressed and how people learn the music. When I was growing up, and certainly when Jimmy was growing up, most of the music was learned from listening to records. And, listening to my mother's records specifically, because my dad wasn't really into the music as much. But she had all the people around, Brooke Benton and Earl Grant, and some Jimmy Smith, and, some of the singers that were around. That's how I came to know a lot of the tunes that I know. Not so much from buying sheet music or having a teacher to sit down and teach you all the harmony and theory.
Sure.
It was learned from guys that were around that were older than you that
of course
showed you stuff.
Yeah.
And Jimmy was one of those guys, man. You would go over to his house and he would sit down and he would show you stuff. He said, man, I can't really explain like technically what all this stuff is, but I'm gonna show it to you. The only thing that was the one drawback to taking lessons from Jimmy was he never played it the same way twice. He just could not do that. He would play, what is that, Dreamsville, and he could play like 22 chords. You're like, man, where are you getting that from? It was just...
It's just in there.
It's just in there, man. It's just...
When you're teaching students at Pitt today in that university academic type setting, as someone who comes from that background, that legacy, how do you try to infuse that legacy with your students in this sort of newer type setting? Can it be done, or do you have to just take a whole new approach?
I think that it can be done. I try to do a mixture of both because it's in a setting where it's kind of sort of curriculum based, where you kind of have to have a baseline of things that you need to know. And so, we go through a system where we're going to teach chords, we're going to teach scales, but it's required that you listen to people. And specifically, some of the great masters like Barney Kessel, George Benson, Wes, Jimmy.
Yep.
I made a little book, and I had all the little chords and all that stuff. But I also had the pictures. Joe Negri, I always highlighted all the Pittsburghers first.
Sure.
Jimmy and Joe Negri and George Benson, and. It's required that you listen to these people because that's where the music is. It's not on the paper. That's some kind of graphical representation of what the music is supposed to be. But it's it's a thing that you feel. Yeah.
So this last tune that we're going to hear is Duke Ellington's In a Mellow Tone, and this is going to feature the group, but with Jimmy's student Gary Moore playing rhythm guitar. So here's In a Mellow Tone. Check this one out. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Vinyl Report as much as I have. If you like the record that we checked out today, here's another one that you might like. Now, we talked a lot today about the legendary guitarist Kenny Burrell, who was a big influence on both Jimmy Ponder and our guest, Mr. Mark Strickland. This is another record that you might like. This is one of my favorite Kenny Burrell records on Columbia called Weaver of Dreams. Kenny Burrell plays beautifully on this, and like Jimmy does on this record that we listened to today, Kenny sings on this, and he sings really, really well. So if you're looking for something else, this is a great one to check out. Mark, thank you so much for being here, man.
My great pleasure, man.
It's such a pleasure to sit here and talk with you about Jimmy. He was such a special person, and I know both of us, our lives are much better because he was in our lives.
That's correct.
You know?
That's correct.
Yeah, man. Thank you, guys. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Vinyl Report. See you then.